What's up, you guys? Today I'm going to be taking you through movements to improve your hip stability. In case you missed it this week on Instagram, I shared a post that explained the importance of doing hip stability movements. I will share a link in the description to the post below. So the hip stabilizing muscles include the glute max, the glute med, the hamstrings, and the deep core muscles. So as I explain each of these movements today, I will let you know which movements are working which muscles, just so you have an idea. We're going to start with the marching test, which is going to be an assessment you can do to understand currently where you are at with your hip stability. From there, we'll go into the movement demonstrations, which will include a bridge, clam shells, toe taps, and Copenhagen Planks. So let's dive in. The marching test, you're going to put your heels up onto a bench so that you have a 90-degree angle at your knees, and then push your heels into the bench to lift your hips up so that it's a straight line from your shoulders all the way to your knees. We are going to take one foot off of the bench at a time, and when you lift that heel up, see what happens in your hips. Is your hips rotating, or is your pelvic position drooping on the side that you lifted the leg? If so, that is an indication that the stability in that particular hip joint is not as strong as you would like it to be. Ideally, your glutes and your hamstrings should be able to keep your pelvis lifted and have control without the drooping or the rotation happening. So you're in the right place, because now I will show you how to do some different exercises so that you can pass this marching test. We'll jump into the double leg bridge. Same starting position, putting your heels on the bench, and then as you press your heels into the top of the bench, it's going to lift your hips up, squeeze those glutes and hamstrings at the top, and then lower back down. So this is working the glutes and the hamstrings. Like I said, you'll feel the deep core muscles working here as well. And if you notice that the bench is kind of moving around on you a little bit as you do this, go ahead and push the bench up against a wall, or you could use a box here as well, just so you don't have to worry about any balance issues. And then you can do this movement in a single leg position too, similar to the marching test, but you'll do all of your reps on one side and then switch to the opposite leg. So again, just tuning into how supported does your hip joint feel in each particular side, and maybe noticing some weaknesses on one side compared to the other. And it's normal to have imbalances. So next we'll jump into the clam shell. This is going to be more of an introduction exercise to working the glute med, which is the outside of the hip. And the reason I say intro is because it's really going to just target that outer hip muscle. Because you're laying on the ground, none of your other muscles are having to really work too hard. So you'll place a band right below your knees, and then make sure that your hips are stacked on top of each other, as well as try to keep that elbow in line with the shoulder. And then you're just going to lift the knee up towards the sky, starting the movement by squeezing the outside of that glute muscle. So this next movement is going to be upright. It's still going to work your glute medius, the outside of the hip, but because you're standing upright, it's going to be a little bit more high intensity. So shift your weight into your standing leg, and then step that opposite foot about a foot away from the body. And as you continue doing this movement and going through reps, you'll start to feel that glute med starting to get warm and firing. You'll probably feel your deep core muscles working here as well, which is exactly what we want. If you need to increase the intensity of this, throw a barbell on your back. This is going to add more resistance to your body, hitting the outsides of those hips. And then for the last movement, we're going to drop back down to the floor and do some Copenhagen Planks. These are going to hit your inner thigh muscles as well as your deep core muscles to help with your hip stability. So here, make sure your upper body is stacked, your elbows are in line with your shoulders, and then your hips are stacked on top of one another. And I just want to point out here that the more of your body that is on the bench, the easier it will be, because you won't have to lift as much of your body weight up off the ground. But then as you can see, the further away you move your upper body from the bench, the longer your lever is, so the more of your weight you're going to be having to lift. So for this movement, press that foot on the bench down towards the ground, and then really focus on using those inner thigh muscles to push down and lift your hips up. At the top of the movement, you want to make sure that your body is in a straight line or as close as possible as you can get. And then you'll just lower the hips down to the floor and keep lifting and lowering to go through repetitions. So there you have it. Those are your 4 exercises you can go through: the bridges, clam shells, toe taps, Copenhagen planks. In order to improve your hip stability, you can start with the marching test to determine and assess where your current hip stability is at. So if you are someone you notice you're having to foam roll or stretch the glutes and the hip flexors quite a bit, that could be another indication that you need to be doing more hip stability. The reason for this is because if you are not working those deep muscles, these bigger superficial muscles like the glute max and the hip flexors are going to have to do a lot of the work and compensating for the deeper stabilization muscles not able to assist in supporting your joints. So for all of these movements, I'd recommend doing about 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. These deeper muscles are going to need a little bit more hypertrophy, more repetition in order to get the stimulus that you want. If you have questions or if you have requests of different movement demonstrations you'd like to see, go ahead and comment those below. And happy stabilization training. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys next time.